Hi folks, welcome to session number 13 of Electronic Music Reviews with Scratch and Gray. In the background our Steven, as busy as usually with the faders and knobs of the coffee machine. Say hello, Steven.
Hello, Steven.
I take 2 cups with sugar, thanks. Synesthesia is a perceptual phenomenon in which stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. So much for the explanation of a rare neurological phenomenon on Wikipedia. But what does it mean for a musician? For someone who is dedicated to electronic music? As so often, you could write novels about it. But the better idea is definitely to convert your experiences regarding these sensory perceptions directly into sound. As an outsider, you can only rudimentarily build an abstract model in your head from verbal descriptions of the phenomenon anyway, but listening to synesthetic music, that should work. Of course, there are limits to the technology to express all the details that the person perceives in a, let's say, transformed way. But if you listen to From Spaceports, which is made by a synesthete, you get at least an idea of what a strange and at the same time fascinating universe will remain close to most people forever. Synestem has dedicated himself to the task of expressing his world of sensations in sound with From Spaceports. This is a series of albums which on the one hand has exactly this very special background, but on the other hand expresses the quite ordinary passion for electronic music of different directions. After all, there are already 5 albums under this name at the moment. What you should know, in any case, is that the subject matter is always based on space, science fiction and technology. So in many tracks of this series, you can actually hear the soundscape you would expect at a futuristic airport, spaceport. Passing airships, the busy hustle and bustle of the passengers, announcement and electronic music of various styles floats above everything. I have to say, Spaceports 3 stands out from the series a little bit, while all other albums are from time to time rather rhythmic, borrowing from Berlin School or even Kraftwerk. And some tunes sound like a vintage version of electro. From Spaceports 3 is a continuously silent work. The album consists of just 2 tracks, which together, after all, cover 70 minutes playing time. While track 1 with the name Memorial is clearly a synesthetic interpretation of Jarre's Waiting for Cousteau, track 2 would probably be more in the drone category. That's why in the first mentioned track the usual sounds appear that one would expect from Jarre himself. Melancholic electronic strings, modulated with a pleasantly slow-moving phaser over it. Bubbling underwater melodies, a subtle curtain of glittering sample and hold effects, wobbling VCOs simulate swirling deep-sea fish, siren-like vocals come from a theremin-like synth patch. So the minutes melt away and you will be surprised with how few instruments one can bridge this time without you getting bored for even 1 second. Just like Waiting for Cousteau, Memorial has no real hook line, but in time-lapse you would probably hear something similar, because a bell-like sound plays through the whole track like a red thread, which holds everything together, but also brings distance between the emerging sound elements. Track 2 is similarly quiet in nature. Floating harmonies hold the atmosphere the whole time, paired with rising and falling sound effects, which seem more like subtle modulations than independent acoustic events. In contrast to track 1, this part of the album seems a bit undercooled at times. Metallic, deep-sounding fragments with a lot of echo wandering back and forth in the stereo field have almost something threatening, dark about them. Nevertheless, it never becomes disharmonic or even nerve-wracking. Of course, I don't know exactly what Synestem had in mind when creating these tracks, or what influences his synapses were subject to, but in this section I hear an astronaut with astonished face carefully walking through an extended gloomy alien spaceship with organically shaped glassy walls, accompanied by the echo of his own steps, echoing from the surfaces of this majestic but also somewhat frightening construction. As you see, the ear has a lot of time to process the incoming acoustic events, which brings us back to the synesthetic concept. Synestem paints a picture of his world here with a lot of space and time, uses subtle musical progressions, spices things up with sound effects, and leaves us, the listeners, a lot of time to let us get involved in this special universe without hectic, with a lot of dynamics, and with many small, pretty likable sound play-arounds. With From Spaceports III, one could, in my humble opinion, best enter this series of 5 albums under this name, even if number 3 is obviously in the middle of the series of his creations. But as I said, it's just my personal opinion, and I'm always dying for those dreamy, long sound walks that you could consume in just about any situation. No matter if you're studying for a math exam, developing a futuristic design on the drawing board, or lazily frying on the beach in the sun. Anyway, I hope I have whetted your appetite for more with From Spaceports III for a whole series of spaceports. Listen to the albums, and if you like what you hear, leave Synestem some nice comments. And of course, the hardcore ones, buy the series. On Facebook you can also connect directly to the Synestem, so you're up to date about whether and when the Spaceports series continues, or when another spacey video by Synestem has gone online on his YouTube channel. Okay, friends of electronic elevator and space music, I say thanks for listening. A link to the album and to the artist's discography can be found in the description below the video. If you liked this session, as always, write us something nice in the comments and check back next week on our channel. If you like, leave a thumbs up or press the subscribe button. You know, then we're pretty happy, and I finally can make that long scheduled space trip with my Avro car. See you next time. Bye bye.